Hello everyone and welcome to the Yellow Shirts podcast about sport. My name is Andrea and I have with me my colleague Ana, and today we're going to talk about winter sports.
I will start with alpine skiing. Skiing can be traced to the prehistoric times, but the discovery of varying size and shapes of wooden planks preserved in the peat books in Russia, Finland, Sweden, and Norway. It is virtually certain that a form of skiing has been an integral part of life in the colder countries for thousands of years. Men and women's alpine skiing both debuted in the Olympic program in 1936. The alpine skiing compete consists of 11 events, 5 each for women and men as well, and mixed team parallel, combine women and men into one team. The downhill feature the longest course and the highest speed in alpine skiing. Super G stands for Super Giant Slalom, and the event that combines the speed of downhill with the more precise and technical turn of giant slalom. In this event, each skier makes one run down and single course, and the faster time determines the winner. In the case of Paralympic Games, we have the alpine skiing. Following the end of the Second World War, there was a systematic development of a ski sport for persons with impairment as injured ex-servicemen returning to sport that they love. In 1948, and the first course were offered. The introduction of a seat ski allowed people in wheelchairs to begin to ski on a race. The first Paralympic Winter Game took place in Sweden in 1976 and featured two alpine disciplines, slalom and giant slalom. Downhill was added at the Paralympic program in 1984 in Austria, and Super G was added in 1994 in Norway. Seat skiing became a medal event at the Nagano in 1998 Paralympic Games. Paralympic skiing is practiced worldwide in the future 6 disciplines: downhill, slalom, giant slalom, Super G, super combined, and team events. Athletes combine speed and agility while racing down slope at speeds of around 100 km per hour. Competition accommodates male and female athletes with physical impairment, such as spinal injury, cerebral palsy, amputations, visual impairment, and less outdoors conditions across the 3 categories: standing, sitting, and visual impaired. Skiers with visual impairment are guided through the course by sighted guide using signals to indicate the course to follow. Some athletes use equipment that is adapted for their needs, including single ski, seat ski, or orthopedic aids.
My first sport is biathlon, and the biathlon type events are known to have been held as early as the 18th century in Scandinavia. The first modern one probably occurred in 1912 when the Norwegian military organized the Forsvarsrennet in Oslo, and it consisted initially of 17 kilometers cross-country ski race and shoot. In 1924 in France, an ancient form of biathlon made its Olympic debut, the military patrol. After some attempts to incorporate it into a winter pentathlon, the biathlon appeared at the Games in its current form only in 1960. The women's biathlon made its first appearance on the Olympic program in Alphaville in 1992. Men and women compete in a sprint, pursuit, individual, mass start, and relay. During the sprint, women race 7.5 kilometers and men race 10 kilometers. The competitors stop twice and must hit 5 targets with 5 bullets each time. For each target missed, athletes take a lap around the 150 penalty loop. The Paralympic version was first introduced in Austria in 1988, and only athletes with physical impairment could compete. Visually impaired ones became eligible to compete only 4 years later in France. Biathlon events consist of 2 kilometers or 2.5 kilometers course skied 3 or 5 times for a total race distance between 6 and 15 kilometers. Each race is divided into 2 or 4 shooting rounds, where athletes must hit 2 targets located at a distance of 10 meters with a rifle. Each miss is penalized by an increase in the overall route time. Athletes with visual impairment are assisted by acoustic signals, which, depending on signal intensity, indicate when the athlete is on target. Male and female athletes are divided into 3 categories: sitting, standing, and visually impaired, according to their impairment, and compete across 3 events: sprint, middle distance, and long distance.
To continue with Olympic Winter Games, I have bobsleigh. The sport of bobsleighs didn't begin until the late 19th centuries when Swedes added two leg-long sleds together and added the steering mechanisms to make a toboggan. In 1924, a four-man race took place at the first ever Olympic Winter Game in Chamonix. A two-man event was added in 1932, Lake Placid gaming in a format that has remained to the present. The first women's event was held in 2002. Bobsleigh team included a brakeman and a pilot in two-man events, while two crewmen pushers are added in the four-man race. From starting start, the crew pushed the sled in unison up to 50 meters. The distance is typical, covering less than 6 seconds, and a span of over 40 kilometers per hour are reached before the crew load into the sled.
My next one is cross-country skiing. The men's event debuted at the first Winter Olympic Games in France in 1924 and the women's at the 1952 Oslo Games. The cross-country skiing competitions consist of 12 different events. Women compete in sprint, team sprint, 10 km individual start, 15 km pursuit, 30 km mass start, and the 4 or 5 km relay, while men compete in sprint, team sprint, 15 km individual start, 30 km pursuit, 50 km mass start, and the 4 or 10 km relay. The Paralympic version is practiced by athletes in 25 countries. The sport first appeared at the Paralympic Games in Sweden in 1976 and has been part of the program ever since. Cross-country skiing competitions are open to athletes with physical impairment and visual impairment. Depending on the functional impairment, the competitor may or may not use a sit ski. Athletes with vision impairment compete in the event with a sighted guide. Male and female athletes compete in short distance, middle distance, and long distance, ranging from 2.5 to 20 kilometers, or participate in a team relay across 3 categories, such as standing, sitting, and vision impaired.
The next Winter Olympic game is curling. It made in the Olympic debut in 1924. Men and women currently compete in 10 teams event, and the sport is played on the temperature-controlled sheets of ice. And the two teams take turns deliver 42 pounds. A stone toward a series of concentric circles. The objective is to get the stone as close to the center of the circle as possible to score more points than the opponent, using sweeping instruments to affect both the occurrence and speed of each stone. One match consists of 10 ends or rounds of throw, and the score for the end is determined when all the 60 stones have been delivered. A team can have one or several stones closest to the center and score their store one or several points in each end. The team with the most points after all the 10 ends have been complete or after the opponent has conceded is the winner. In the Paralympic version is wheelchair curling, made in the Paralympic debut in Torino 2006. Wheelchair curling is similar, it is the normal version, like able body version, with some adaptation. Two teams comprise of 4 players, each takes turns sliding stone across, and an ice sheet toward a target are called the house. Teams score points by getting as close to the center of the house as possible. The team with the most points after 8 ends win. The head of the team is called to skip, who usually dictates other players' shot, stone, verbal, and visual instruction. The main difference between the wheelchair curling and able body version, there is no sweeping and wheelchair curling, and a delivery stick is allowed. In the wheelchair curling, stones are delivered from a stationary wheelchair. Each team must be comprised of female and male players.
My next one is figure skating. It's the oldest sport of the Olympic Winter Games program. It was contested at the 1908 London Games and again in 1920 in Antwerp. Men's, women's, and pairs were the 3 events contested until 1972, and within the next Olympic in 1976, ice dancing has been introduced as an event as well, proving really a great success. The events are for singles, pairs, and ice dance. The single event consists of 2 sections, the short program and free skating. The short program combines 8 prescribed elements such as jump combination and spins, performed to music of the skater's choice, while in the free skating program, skaters perform an original arrangement of techniques, also to music of their choice. To gain a high score from the judges, a balanced program is important. The pairs event also consists of a short program and free skating. The couple works on as one unit, demonstrating overhead lifts, throw jumps with the man launching his partner, and many other highly technical maneuvers. This contrasts with ice dance, which is composed of a compulsory dance, original dance, and a free dance, and is more akin to ballroom dancing on ice.
The next Winter Olympic game is freestyle skiing, was recognized discipline by the International Ski Federation in 1979, and freestyle skiing was contest and demonstration sport in 1988 in Calgary Games. There were events for both men and women in all three events: moguls, aerials, and ballet. 4 years later, the mogul event gained a medal status at the Albertville Games, as did in the aerial event in 1994. 12 freestyle skiing events, men, women, and mixed team aerial, men and women's moguls, men and women's half pipe, and slopestyle and big air.
My next one is ice hockey, and it's originating from Canada in the early 19th century, based on several similar sports played in Europe. The word hockey comes from the Old French word of hoquet, meaning stick. Around 1860, a puck was substituted for a ball, and in 1879, two McGill University students devised the first rules. Six-a-side men's ice hockey has been on the program of every edition of the Winter Games since 1924, while the women's only made their debut in 1998. A regular game consists of 3 20-minute periods with a 15-minute intermission after the first and second periods. Teams change ends for each period. If a tie occurs in a medal round game, a 5-minute sudden victory overtime period is played. In the gold medal, 20-minute sudden victory period is played, subsequent to another 15 minutes intermission. The para-ice hockey was invented at a rehabilitation center in Stockholm, Sweden during the early 1960s by a group of Swedes who, despite their physical impairment, wanted to continue playing hockey. The sport made its Paralympic debut at Lillehammer in 1994 in Norway. In 2016, the sport was renamed and rebranded to para-ice hockey. As in ice hockey, each team attempts to outscore its opponent by shooting the puck across the ice and into the opposing team's goal, while also preventing the opposing team from scoring. 6 players, including the goalkeeper from each team, are on the ice at the same time. The competition is a mixed team tournament in which women can play alongside men. There are 3 15-minute periods with 15-minute breaks. The match goes into overtime if the score is tied after the third period. There is no goal in overtime, penalty shots are applied.
The next winter game is luge. It was developed as a sport in Switzerland. Its roots go back to the 16th century. It was not until 300 years later that the first luge tracks were built by Swiss hotel owners to cater for thrill-seeking tourists. It was not until 1955 that the first World Championship was organized. 9 years later, in 1964, luge made its Olympic debut in the Innsbruck Games with a mixed event, a men event and a women event. The program has not changed since then. In 1976, this sport has taken place on the same track as bobsleigh. Men and women currently compete in a single event and doubles event. Officially, the doubles event is open to the men and women, but traditionally men have ridden together, with the larger men lying in the top of the more aerodynamic feet. In both men's and women's singles, the competition takes 2 days with 2 runs staged on each day. Each runs count. The 4 time are added up, and the fastest total time determines the winner. Men and women compete on the same track, but women start from a position further down the course. Double luge is 1-day competition in which pair of athletes take 2 runs down a course. Like singles, each run counts and the fastest total time determines the winner.
We have the Nordic combine. For centuries in the snow-covered north, skis were required to chase game and gather firewood in wintertime. With long distances between the small isolated communities and hard snowy winters, skiing also became important as means of keeping in social contact. The word ski is Norwegian and comes from the Old Norse word skid, a split length of wood. The Nordic combine is currently competed by men, and there are 3 events, each consisting of ski jumping competition and a cross-country skiing race. For the normal hill Gundersen event, ski jumping takes place on the normal hill of 90 meters. For the team and the large hill Gundersen event, ski jumping takes place on the large hill of 120 meters. The cross-country skiing portion of the Gundersen event has 10 kilometers race, and the team event has a 4 or 5 kilometers relay.
The next sport is short track or indoor speed skating began in Canada and United States of America, where they held mass start competition in an oval track as early as in 95-96. The lack of 400 long track led many North American skaters to practice on ice rink. Men and women compete in 500 meters, 1000 meters and 1500 meters. There is a 5000 meters relay for men and 3000 meters rally for a woman. In each event, skaters must outwit in a skate their fellow competitors in a series of eliminator hits until the finalists remain the battle it out. Time is the secondary factor. In fact, the Olympic and world records have been set in non-medal hits.
Skeleton. Sleighing is one of the oldest winter sports. Description of the sport can be found in 16th century literature, but as a racing sport it can be traced to the middle 19th century when British tourists started sliding down snowbound roads in the Alps. British and American holidaymakers built the first toboggan run in Davos in 1882. Men's skeleton made 2 early appearances on the Olympic program at its first ancestral home of St. Moritz in 1928 and 1948. It was then dropped until it reappeared as a men's and women's event at Salt Lake City in 2002. Skeleton, which takes place on the same track or run as the bobsleigh, starts with the running push phase, after which the athlete dives onto the sled and descends the track. Athletes lie prone, facing downhill with arms at their sides, steering the skeleton with movements of their body.
The next sport is ski jumping. The origin of ski jumping can be traced to Ole Rai, who jumped 9.5 meters in 18A in Norway, and he was considered the father of the modern ski jump. In 1866, he won what has been described as the world's first ski jumping competition, with prize in Norway. Ski jumping has been part in the Olympic Games since the first game in Mont Blanc 1924. The normal heat competition was included in the Olympic program in 1964, and from 1988 the team event was added at the third competition. Ski jumping has 5 events: the individual normal hill for women and men, the individual large hill, and the team events on the large hill, both for men, and as well as mixed team event combined team of women and men. In the individual event, each athlete gets 2 jumps, and the athlete with the highest combined score is the winner. In the team event, each team has 4 members, and the field is reduced to the 8th best team after the first jump.
Snowboarding. It was developed in the United States in the 1960s as people across the country began to seek out new winter activities. Over the next decade, various pioneers boosted the production of boards and the sport began to gain crossover appeal. Interesting fact is that the surfers and skateboarders became more involved due to the similarities of their sports. Men's and women's snowboarding made their Olympic debut in Nagano in 1998 with giant slalom and halfpipe competitions. The discipline proved an instant success and returned to Salt Lake City 4 years later with parallel giant slalom and halfpipe competitions. In Turin, snowboards cross also made its debut. In this event, 4 riders race across a course studded with jumps, bumps, and huge turns. There are 11 snowboard events nowadays. As a Paralympic sport, it made its debut at Sochi in 2014 with 2 medal events and has grown rapidly to expand to 10 events in Korea 2018. Athletes compete in 2 disciplines, snowboard cross and banked slalom, across 3 categories. For lower limb, there are 2, and 1 for upper limb impaired athletes.
For the last sport game, we have speed skating. The Dutch were arguably 2 earliest pioneers of the skating. They began using the canals to mountains communication but skating from village to village as far back as 30 centuries. Skating eventually spread across the channel to England, and soon the first clubs and artificial rinks began to form. And speed skating appeared in the first time in 1924 at the first Olympic Games. Initially, only men were allowed to participate. It was only late Placid Games in 1932 the women were authorized to compete in speed skating, which was the only and demonstration sport. It was not until 1960 Games in the Squash Valley that women's speed skating was officially included in the Olympic program. Men and women compete in 500, 1000, 1500 meters and 5000 meters and the team pursuit. There is also 10,000 meters for men and 3,000 meters for women. In each event, a skater race in pair against in the clock on a standard 400 meters over ring. All events are skated once, apart from 500 meters, which is skated twice. In this case, the final result is based on the total time of the two races.
That was it for this week. Thank you for being with us. We hope you liked it. Next week we will talk about the competencies that can be gained through sports. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye bye.